Hello, and welcome to the 6th episode. It seems to have just flown by, of Unboxing the Internet, where we are examining the comments sections from the Internet around Marvel diversity. And I'm Judith, this is Monica, this is McKenna.
Unbox the Internet.
And shall we go to the box?
I get to go to the box. This is my turn. And oh my goodness, this is a totally arbitrary comment. Too
I'm
much,
a rule
too
follower.
fast. You're wrong. Too much, too fast. We heard this approximately 11 billion times. Comic Storian says... Oh no, Static720 responding to Comic Storian. I completely agree with you. Most of the diversity is perfectly fine, and I love it. It's nice. Thank you. But Marvel really does need to slow down on all of the diversity because now they're just changing a lot of characters way too fast. So I would say, I mean, it's hard to say which was the, because we're not mathematicians and we're not doing, what's that kind of research where you count? Quantitative, because we're not doing quantitative. I couldn't say the exact number, but I think probably more than any other comment we saw, why do you have to change our beloved characters? We're fine with you adding diversity characters, but, and this is in the context of, to let people know who might not know, Thor is now,
Jane
she's
Foster.
still Thor, but she's Jane Foster. Thor has become the unworthy Thor. Captain America is replaced by Sam Wilson, who's Cap. Sam Wilson, who was usually Falcon.
Yes. Though Steve Rogers is still there.
No, he's not. Riri Williams has replaced Iron Man, who's in a coma, am I correct?
He's in a coma, but he is advising her as an AI.
Yes, and then Amadeus Cho, who replaced Hulk. So the idea is that diversity has happened at the expense of existing and beloved characters. And so, thoughts on this one? Going first, I will say, I get it. I think that those of us who have read comics for a long time have characters that we really glom onto and are very attached to. And part of being a fan is that kind of passionate devotion to, I think it's Cornell Sandvoss, and I will put a link to this in the comments, or sorry, in the description for the video, who talks about that what characterizes fandom from just liking something is passionate devotion. And so, as a fan, having your character be written out and replaced is not good. And the fact that they're doing it all at once could arguably be a bad marketing choice on their part. But what would you guys say?
About the marketing choice,
Yeah.
It was a marketing choice. They labeled it as all new, all different. So I feel like instead of getting upset, it might be interesting to see what this unique take on their characters is, the change is. But instead, lots of people are getting upset that their favorites are gone, even though they're not necessarily gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's all new, all different, but it's 4 white guys replaced by non-white guys. So clearly diversity is central to that all new, all different.
Yeah. Something I've seen variations on in the comics over and over again is, well, what if they all of a sudden decided to make Black Panther a white guy from Tennessee?
So wrong.
Which would be problematic. I say using that academic word again. So there's that idea that how can shifts happen and what shifts make things something so different that it's not part of that identity anymore. But there's also too that difference between identity and mantles. And that's something which comes on again and again with Thor, because Thor is supposedly not a mantle, it's an identity. He is a Norse god. How can the Norse god
be not Thor?
How can Thor be not Thor? How can Odin's son be wandering around being unworthy and not Thor?
Wasn't there an alligator Thor at some? I might just be making stuff up.
There's Cat Thor and Squirrel Girl, but that's that's fanfic within canon, so
It's complicated.
Yes, it's complicated. But something like Iron Man is a Mantle.
And Captain America's a Mantle.
Mantle.
Captain America is not Steve Rogers. They're two separate identities.
Yeah, and so Iron Man has been replaced before. Captain America has been replaced before. They always
Bucky
go
Barnes.
back.
Yeah, and I mean,
And-
and I think that people weren't crazy about Cap Bucky back in the day either. And I mean, so I think that there's always, whenever there's a change in the mantle, like fans always go crazy. And I think we probably need to put this in the context of we're fans ourselves. Like, I don't think I didn't continue watching Doctor Who once Christopher Eccleston was gone, which means I'm actually not a very good Doctor Who fan.
No, you're not.
Because I don't believe in regeneration, apparently. But I can see this attachment to this character, and also we have to put all of the kerfuffle in the context of fans are always going to fan, and we're always going to lose our shit about things. This is where we might get a little bit controversial. I feel like there's an edge of white panic to this response that is not just, or it's maybe the two things combined together. There are people who are just legitimately upset about losing their favorite character. But this kind of constant thing of why are you replacing us, or why are you replacing the people I can identify with somebody that I can't identify with, and it's always seems to be about race and gender, that I think we can't ignore either. So one thing I would say is, I get it. They did do a lot all at once, but it's too soon. I think is something that people of color and people of other ethnicities and identities have been hearing forever. And the question is when. When do you get to get representation that isn't simply white people? And why I say white panic is this fear of being replaced. That might have been something that came up in recent protests, and so I'd say this fear of being replaced speaks to the idea that white privilege is something that's being chipped away at, and I would say yes, maybe it is, and that's good. And it's good for
people who actually do want to have that representation, who aren't necessarily looking to replace, but be included. So Unzounced, on Jesse Sheedan's IGN article, says, people who love their traditional superheroes are so offended by inclusive changes. Why? Why does this hurt your feelings so much? These characters are fictional. I'm an African-American guy, and I think it's freaking awesome to see a few of the superhero characters I was once in awe of as a kid look like me. So that idea very much of the identification that black people have always had to do with white characters, that women have always been asked to do with male characters. And not being asked to do that is a revelation. And it's also, again, looking towards that next generation. I have an 8-year-old child, he said, an 8-year-old son. I think it's a great thing for him to see superheroes that look like himself, which to me is a really, really powerful example. Really, it's anecdotal, but it's followed immediately by someone fighting with it. We are not offended by the inclusion of diverse characters. We are angry, so not offended, but angry at them replacing the characters we have loved for years with race swaps and gender flips. So it's not specifically even that they're being replaced, but they're being replaced in terms of race and gender.
Yeah.
If they are not publishing the characters we want to read about, we as the primary consumer base, creating this very much us-them, we as the primary consumer base are well within our rights to cease buying their books and tell them why we have stopped reading. The majority, and majority is capitalized, of us seem to want our classic characters more than these new ones. We do not owe Marvel or your son anything. If we wish to stop buying Marvel until they give us back what we want, then we have every right to do so. And the anger there, it's one thing to be angry at Marvel, but to be angry here, it seems to be at this 8-year-old child who wants to...
How dare you have desires?
Who wants
How dare
to
you want
see
things?
Batman or Spider-Man look like him, who might be excited by that. that fear of being replaced is actually seems to be here a fear of losing a privileged position, that fear of being the only voice. Because what unexounced, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, is asking for is not a complete blackwashing, but some representation, some space at the table, some space in the pages.
And makes an important case for why it should be these classic characters that are so iconic, right?
Mm-hmm.
That, it is important to see Captain America as a black man, especially considering, the significance of African Americans to American culture as a whole. And so it's like, I get it, you don't want to lose all your characters, but you're not going to. Anyone who says they're a comics fan knows that none of these things are permanent and forever. And so I don't get the backlash. I think that the backlash is too strong for what is actually happening. And so to me, I'm like, the question I think we should all ask ourselves, if you're a white reader, is why can't you identify with America Chavez? Why can't you identify with Kamala Khan? What is getting in the way of that? And I would argue you can. I mean, I certainly do. And I can't speak for everybody. Do you, McKenna?
Definitely.
And maybe in some ways more than the traditional characters.
I don't know the traditional characters that much, but I like the new one.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think that going forward, I hope that Marvel continues diversity efforts. I hope not as a specific marketing campaign, but actually as just a way to write good, complex stories that are set in the world, which Marvel has always done, and I hope they continue that. I'd like to see them have less events.
Yes, which they claim they're going to.
And I'd like to see them, integrate the new characters into this universe, but I'd also be happy to see more standalone stories that don't get all caught up in other things. Any wishes for the fandom for you guys?
I want what I think every single commenter says they want, and I think most of them do want, which is good storytelling, but good storytelling which shows the world as it is. Good storytelling which reflects the issues of the day. For me, comic books aren't necessarily escapism. Comic books stories which actually reflect what I care about in the world. And comic books, imagining what the world can be. So in some ways, because comic books so much are about good versus evil, they have to do some of this political work to try and make the world reflect what the content of the comic books is.
I guess the argument you could make, which is an interesting one, which there is no time for or necessarily even place for in this discussion, but we could maybe do it in another series, escapism. Do we have to have politics? Does it have to reflect the real world? Are we getting into a Victorian sort of moral aesthetic?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Mercorgis are just mercorgis, and
yes, maybe mercorgis
are
aren't political. That is an interesting question. I mean, we're English academics, so we probably say it's always political, and you can't ever get away from the political. But maybe that's the way we see the world. So should we leave it on that note, or should we end on a more positive one? That was pretty positive. We all want good stories.
Sure.
Send us out, yes.
Hey, thanks for joining us on this series of videos, Unboxing the Internet. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we might see you in the future.
Hopefully. Bye. Thanks, Max. Awesome.
Great.
That was a lot of fun.
Unbox the internet. Nerds will find a way. Unbox the internet. What's with kids today? Wonder Woman Spider-Man. Look out now, I'm just a fan, but I've got something to say, and that's okay.